Friends, I would request all of you to kindly come in the front and join us for this session, which is really very important in present day's context. We have very distinguished panelists with us. We have Tan Sri Dato Dr. Michael Yeo, CEO and Director, Asian Strategy and Leadership Institute from Malaysia, Mr. Rashid Fargati, Managing Director, UPS Indian Subcontinent, Mr. Dammu Ravi, Joint Secretary from Ministry of Commerce. He will be joining us shortly. I welcome you all to the final session of the day, that is redefining global value chains, challenges for integrating SMEs from the developing world. After a fruitful day of insightful discussions, this session is likely to be richer and therefore more valuable. As we all know, India has been making very targeted efforts to optimize the manufacturing sector. The most important push for this has come from Make in India campaign, which has been the government's clarion call for industry to galvanize production. The government envisaged this campaign to realize its vision to having manufacturing-led economic growth. At the heart of this core development strategy is the need to enable small and medium enterprises, that is SMEs. SMEs are some of the largest job creators in India. This makes them key to realizing the benefits from India's demographic dividend, which, if not employed, may become a demographic burden. It is no surprise then that they have become so central to so many of the government development targets, linking job growth to economic growth and therefore stability. As we all know, in today's times, production and consumption are internationally linked. All production happens across global value chains. This has led international experts to coin the term made in the world. Any product is made with inputs from multiple parts of the world. Raw material might be acquired from country A for refinement in country B and C, and final assembly then takes place in country D. In this situation, creating an enabling environment for SMEs is of vital importance to ensure their resilience to global flux and expand their reach in international markets. I welcome the various experts we have on the panel here today. Through the course of this discussion, they will help us answers to some fundamental questions for the promotion of SMEs. That is, how can we promote SMEs to become part of the global value chains? How can the services sector bolster participation from the manufacturing sector in global value chains? How can conformity to quality standards be promoted in order to achieve these goals? With these initial remarks, I would like to invite our first panelist, Dr. Michael Yeo, CEO and Director, Asian Strategy and Leadership Institute, Malaysia, to share his views. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and pleasure for me to be invited once again to speak at the CII Partnership Summit. I think this is the 6th time that I'm participating in this annual series of partnership summits. I must apologize at the outset that I have a flight immediately after this, and I need to take leave of all of you immediately after I have spoken. Globalization, innovation, and technology will drive the global value chain. The global value chain has wide implications on trade and investments, and the global value chain covers a wide range of key business functions like production, logistics, distribution, procurement, sales and marketing, research and development, customer service, and so on. All of these processes can be disrupted by technology and innovation. Technology and innovation help countries and companies move up the global value chain. Disruptive innovation and digital disruption will have an impact on the global value chain. Today, we come across a lot of e-logistics, industrial automation, and Industry 4.0 that will change and transform the global value chain. It is our concern that millions of workers will be displaced with automation and robotics. There is therefore an urgent need for reskilling and retraining our workers. And the last session before these that emphasizes reskilling, I think, is an important one. Driverless technology will be adopted by the supply chain companies for long-distance haulage. We therefore need to continue to innovate, to create jobs of the future. We need to explore and develop perhaps a stronger partnership between India and ASEAN countries for the new era of global value chain, particularly for SMEs and for knowledge exchange. Perhaps the CII can take that lead and that initiative to foster closer ASEAN-India SME partnership for the global value chain. The global value chain must include the MSME sector, for MSMEs need to be able to gear up for digital disruption. SMEs need help with capacity building and in the upskilling of workers, as well as access to capital for financing purchases of new equipment, hardware, and robotic systems. One big worry is how can SMEs cope with 4D printing? Digital technology and real-time information will transform traditional supply chain from freight forwarding to management system, data exchange, and real-time logistics. Warehouse management systems are now fully automated, as well as fulfillment centers for e-commerce. We see also a lot of autonomous drones and driverless vehicles that will impact also on the global supply chain. Today's new consumers will base their consumer behavior and experience through the internet and social media. And that is something that perhaps SMEs can also gear up and be able to be in the forefront of e-commerce. For SMEs would be able to leverage on e-commerce to reach a wider range of consumers. Another important trend for business to factor in is the growth of e-payment systems or e-wallets as we move towards a cashless society. And again, this is another trend that SMEs need to take into account. The power of information is now in the hands of consumers. Businesses, perhaps working with government and industry organizations like CII, have to develop a digital code of conduct. And we'd like to see perhaps these being discussed at many regional forums. Artificial intelligence will also impact on jobs of the future. AI can replace a lot of jobs now, as well as create new ones. We need highly trained professionals coordinate and manage complex AI systems. Governments and business needs a new strategy to focus on new types of education models, lifelong learning, virtual universities, and reskilling for the new age of intelligent automation. And I think these are the challenges that we all need to work together to ensure that the SMEs are not left out of the global value chain. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you so much, Datoyo. What you said is absolutely true that in CI also you should have a digital code, and how do we ensure that going forward the global value chain is taken to its logical conclusion, and that's how in this partnership summit linkages between different countries, linkages between different states, and linkages between SMEs and large scale become so important. I know you have a flight to catch. If you have 15 more minutes, you would like to be here for some more time? Yeah, okay. So, can I now request Mr. Rashid for his comments, please? You also have to go.
Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity given to me to participate to this event. I see the global value chains as a heat map that lights up as more stakeholders across the world get connected. And more Indian SMEs need to get connected to this heat map. I've been in India now for more than a year, and after having worked across diverse international markets, what struck me is that beside the geographic dividend, the diversity dividend that India has is a tremendous opportunity to begin with. According to PwC, by 2040, the purchasing power of the emerging markets, E7, is expected to double the G7. And we know that India and China will be key drivers of that growth. The last 3 to 4 years have witnessed changing business and economic dynamic, which present a huge opportunity for Indian businesses to grow internationally going forward. Global value chains have redefined what is needed to be part of this chain. SME is a supplier to a typical producer-driver chain, which is a characteristic of capital and technology-intensive industries as such automobiles, telecommunications, IT, and semiconductors require certain level of technical capabilities and sophistication, and associated investments, obviously. Infrastructure, strong technology capabilities, and we spoke a lot about that the last couple of days. The flexibility in response, a strong customer service orientation, and capacity to work in sync with the producer's technology systems are key considerations. Poor trade infrastructures increase costs and time of export operation by the larger price to pay is that it could lead to a company or even a country from participating in the global value chains. And we have seen in India, there is high focus on developing commercial airports, for example. And more attention now is given also to cargo and courier terminals, same as the development of ports. And this is why in the recent years, the Indian economy has been one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And this is the result of years of economic reforms. To push growth rates even higher will require modern and well-functioning infrastructures. However, with more rapid economic growth and a rising population, infrastructure improvements must run faster just to stand still, and as the demands placed on road, rail, and air connectivity increase. According to McKinsey, by 2025, India will have 69 cities with a population of more than 1 million each. Economic growth will center on them, and the biggest infrastructure building will take place there. India's commitment to creating smart cities, where infrastructures and information technology will play a key role, will help promote manufacturing, introduce technology, reduce pressure on metro cities by creating jobs in these cities, and also develop skill sets. The last plenary sessions has been covering that aspect as well. The development of skills is going to be key. And the Indian government has been taking, I would say, two key measures recently, which is going to help SMEs to enter these global value chains. The first one in the recent budget, it has been allocated 3,079 crore, which is almost $600 million of budget allocated to the MSME sector. The other key step that the government has taken is that recently, for the first time, there is now a logistics division which reports to the Minister of Commerce and Industry. We're going to focus really on the logistics sector. And I think this is what's going to be a big game changer for the future in India. If I go back to UPS, who I represent today, SMEs are a key focus area. And in our experience, there are three aspects that drive the participation of SMEs into the global value chain. The first one is the connectivity. Eventually, it's all about a network being able to connect to maximum countries in the smartest way possible. Today, we have a network which allows to transport on a daily basis 3% of the world GDP, connecting 220 countries and territories. The other aspect is technology. And I think we are in the right place when we heard the vision of the Honorable Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh and what the government of India is doing. Technology is a key element if you want to help SMEs to get into the global value chain. And I want to give an example on how technology is playing a key role in UPS. We spoke a lot about drones, and everybody is trying to understand how drones are going to shape the future of the logistics. We already started in UPS. In Rwanda, we are partnering with a company called Zipline, and what we do is we help population in rural areas with limited access by road to get some blood sample delivered. We have seen that this is really working really well, efficiently, and we are able to get reaching those territories which are not well connected by flying drones there and delivering those blood samples. And the latest aspect I want to cover is efficiency. Efficiency which ensures that there is no idle inventory on either the supplier or the buyer side of the business. So global value chains are driven by new forces, as we spoke. State-of-the-art infrastructures, just in time to market are some of the key requirements that are intrinsic for Indian SMEs to be part of the global value chain. It is about building efficiency in the supply chain. It is about relooking at business strategies. Finally, in order to be part of this heat map, it is about ensuring that we support the Indian MSMEs to constantly create value in these global chains. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Sid. You very rightly said that the essence of the connectivity is very, very important. Connectivity between the countries, connectivity between companies, and connectivity between large scale and small scale. That is how we'll ultimately reach to the global value chain. And with this now, I would invite Siddhamu Ravi, our Joint Secretary from Ministry of Commerce, Government of India, to enlighten us.
Thank you, Chair, and Rachid, Vergati, and friends in the audience. Yeah, so I think a lot of the subject matter has already been covered. So I really don't want to go into details as to what it means. And being part of this partnership summit, every one of you are fully familiar with the global value chains. But let me give you a somewhat different perspective from the way the Ministry of Commerce and Industry looks at the global value chains. We need to first recognize that the consumer is the biggest beneficiary of global chains. I think that is the fundamental aspect in the way the global chain moves. Now, behind that are the several players. And who are the players? There are the manufacturers, there are the producers, the service providers, various other players. We also have to recognize that this is not something new. It has been happening over a period of time. But what is different here is that in the 21st century, the global value chain phenomena has become very, very active. Now, there are many factors. Traditionally, the manufacturing was happening, a movement of raw materials, probably intermediate products, and the trade was taking place seamlessly between nations. But the 21st century, this activity in this particular century has become much more robust. And how does it happen? There's no one country, first of all, producing all goods. If you look at automobile, a car, maybe at a time when every part of a car was produced in one country, but that is not so. Today, you have car companies sourcing material from different parts of the world. It could be from India, which if you have the competence, if the product is qualitatively good, it is well priced, then naturally the sourcing happens. So without any intervention. So in other words, it's the market intervention really determines from where a particular firm sources that material. Another interesting phenomena in the manufacturing is the role of services. The services is increasingly playing a very, very strong input in the manufacturing. Now, how does this happen? You have, again, I take you an example of automobile. Today you have, the dynamics of the car have changed. You have software embedded in the cars. You have GPS system linked to the cars. Then you have the services. The company that gives you a car is also servicing you every now and then. So these are all a part of the manufacturing deal. So I think what it tells us is that the production processes are evolving constantly in the global value chain. So naturally, quality is a primary aspect. The price is a primary aspect. So when you are looking at these two elements in a particular input into the manufacturing, then the costs have to come down over a period of time. So those companies that are not able to adapt to this changing, those companies also have a problem in staying in the market. So you will see a disruption in their activity, and sometimes the companies will have to wind down. This is the flip side of the global value chains. The companies are not able to adapt to technologies, the company is not able to gear up to the needs of the demands of the manufacturing production chain, then it naturally has to wind up. Now, I'll also tell you where we are as developing countries. It's important to understand countries like India, where we are in these global value chains. I think the primary determinant of a global value chain for a country to be actively participant is the infrastructure. And Mr. Fergati has mentioned about it, how the UPS is so much expanded into the country and doing a lot of connectivity in the country. Even the previous speaker, Mr. Michael Vo, also mentioned about the importance of how the artificial intelligence and robotics are going to be increasingly disruptive if you are not able to adapt to it. So for a developing country, the logistics is a major criteria. Ease of doing business, so much has already been mentioned in the morning sessions about what we are doing in the ease of doing business. Then the IT-enabled technologies that are playing a great role in the manufacturing. The tariffs, the import duties also have an important role, because if your intermediate products have to move into a country, then your tariffs have to be restructured. Then the standards. The product has to undergo quality tests. It has to meet the global standards. Then the most important element is close to the markets. The production chains are moving around the world where the markets are. Why is it today India attracting a lot of FDIs into the country? Because the market is here. It's a 1.3 billion population with a huge purchasing power. So naturally, the production chains will move into the country. Now, the advantage here is when big companies move into an economy, what happens is it develops ancillary products. So there are a lot of the MSME sector is the biggest beneficiary of such a inward FDI inflows. Now, this is a challenge as well, and a lot of it has been mentioned. How do you deal with MSMEs having to cope with it? Then the typical argument that is thrown across is for our developing countries benefiting from the global value chains. Now, this is the biggest argument. Some critics say not really, because the big company is placed in developed economies and they are taking control of the production elsewhere. They are determining the standards. They are making the product in developing countries using cheap labor, and what the developing countries ultimately get is a very small segment of what is sold, because we have to understand that there is a component called the intellectual property rights. So a country which is holding that intellectual property right is the biggest beneficiary in the global value chains. So the criticism is generally the developing countries which are engaged in global value chains are actually receiving very little in return through this global value chain concept. But I think what we have to understand is, even though the returns are small, we need to be prepared to take the challenge. Why? Because one, any economic activity is good for employment. It generates jobs. The second is, again, a manufacturing activity in any country will bring in technology into your country. And that technology will help you to produce newer products, improve the quality of products. So, purely from the economic angle of a country, it is important to be engaged, however small the returns may be. But eventually what will happen is the companies will start to get into a greater value addition of that product and then move up the value chain. So now this where is the support of the government will be required. I will briefly touch upon the policy interventions that are needed in order to enable the Indian companies, particularly the small and medium-scale enterprises, to link into the global value chains. One of which is, first of all, you need to ensure that the SMEs are able to survive in a competitive world. Now, how do you allow that to happen? One is the support structure that both the line ministry, which is the MSME ministry, and the Ministry of Commerce and the Department of Industries are able to look at what are the requirements of the MSME. And I would tend to think as a priority, first would be, are you giving support for value addition? If you look at, I can only talk for Department of Commerce, what we have done is the MEIS scheme, Manufacturing Export Incentive Schemes. We are also giving SEIS, Service Export Incentive Schemes. Then we are also supporting a lot of industries to take part in the trade fairs abroad. So smaller companies, they're able to take part internationally in various trade fairs to make themselves known in the marketplace about what is their product and at what price they're able to sell it. We are also assisting the industry with intelligence reports, the market intelligence reports. So we commission a lot of agencies to do market intelligence reports for the benefit of the industry. And of course, CII is one of our biggest partner in that initiative. We are also doing capacity building. I think the skilling is very important. The Ministry of Skill is fully aware, the Department of Industry is also fully aware the need for skilling. Now, this is a lot of the previous speakers have touched upon the fact that artificial intelligence, robotics are going to take away jobs, which is true. But I think we also need to gear up to this challenge, because we should not be afraid that the jobs will be lost because something is going to happen. We should be prepared that because that change is going to happen, that you will gear up to meet the requirement. You will need definitely people to continue to do those jobs, but at a different level of skill requirement. You will need a lot more skillful people to be able to man robots, to be able to do robotic engineering, artificial intelligence, 3D printing. So what is required in future for the jobs is not that jobs will go down, but the high-skilled jobs will have to come into the marketplace, and that will be what we need to see from the policy angle. And how do we create that enabling environment that greater skills people are able to, youngsters who are coming out into the market are able to cope up, adapt to this. The fourth element, I think a lot of it has been touched, is access to credit, access to finance, access to technology. Now these are very important elements, because if an MSME does not have a smooth access, a seamless access to credit, it's going to die. So we need to ensure that that channel is kept open. So is the case of technology. Now technology does not come easy, because technology in most developed countries is a closely guarded secret. And why I should only blame developed countries, even developing countries keep the technology as a very, very closely guarded secret. But that is where we need to work on homegrown technologies. And second is to be able to invest in joint ventures. Joint venture kind of business collaborations will bring in technology into your country. So we have to be open to the idea of greater joint venture, joint collaborations for the technology to come in. I think I would like to add another element, which is companies should be incentivized to invest in technology. So maybe a mandatory requirement of, let's say, 5% of the return and a supporting incentive from the government for reinvesting in R&D would be very essential, because value addition is a critical factor in staying afloat in the global value chains. So I have the budgetary support. The budgetary support, I think many of you are aware what has happened in the budget. A lot of incentives have been given for small and medium scale enterprises, tax incentives particularly. Then from the Ministry of Commerce, again, I would like to emphasize what we are doing on the trade facilitation issues. So India has ratified the WTO agreement on the trade facilitation agreement, which had come into force about a year ago, and we are doing the implementation aspects on a war footing. The National Committee on Trade Facilitation has been set up. So every month, the Cabinet Secretary and assisted by various ministries are looking at the implementation aspects, and the state governments are party to that TFA. So then last word, in particular with this Visakhapatnam, I feel this city can be the hub, because hub for logistics, it has a natural advantage to be a #1 city for the hubs, because if it's well connectivity and it's port, airport, so we can have multiple options into the future as to how the logistics and connectivity can grow in the country. And as these elements grow, the global value chains, the India's participation and Indian MSMEs participation in the global value chains will become very, very crucial and important. I'll stop here and thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ravi. Friends, we have heard from the policymaker, and the key word what he says was, how do we enable the able? There is capability, there is ability, and how does the government help, whether in terms of assessing the market, in terms of assessing finance, technology, market development assistance. You started by saying that we have to change with the changing time, and there are no boundaries, there are no limitations. We can be manufacturing in India, we can be assembling in USA. Ultimately, we have to integrate with the best. Friends, I think we had a very fruitful session, and with this, we come to the end of today's deliberations, and tomorrow morning again we'll be meeting. And of course, from CII, they will be making the announcement regarding the dinner. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanjay Budia. Thank you to all our panelists for such an invigorating session. The importance of technology, importance of joint ventures, and how collaboration is the way forward. Once again, a warm round of applause for all our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, was the last session. It was very kind of them to stay back for it. With that, we conclude our day 2 of the CII Partnership Summit, ladies and gentlemen. We would request all the industry members, speakers, international delegates, and guests to please join us for dinner and a cultural program.